We've already bought most of Paul's books, but I think he's got a couple left. If you want to buy a book after and get it signed. But we thought first we'd have a bit of a Q&A because obviously we've got a lot of Buzzcocks fans in here, and I thought you might want to ask some questions. So, who's got a question for Paul?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Caroline.
Oh, Caroline. Saved us then, I thought nobody had a question. Go for it.
I'll have to shout. It's funny that time's up. That was on the
Sorry, I can't use that.
Oh God, that's stand up.
Don't drop it.
Time's up.
Yeah.
That's on my. I wasn't around very early this time.
Yeah.
Not the same as you do, but on the 10-inch of last night, the surface.
Yeah.
That's the last thing we played, isn't it? And at the end it says, John the Postman, this is your night.
Yeah.
But the question is, who is he?
John the Postman, right, so he was a postman, John the Postman. And so he was at every gig in Manchester, John the Postman.
Right, what did John do?
And he used to get up at the end. And jump on the stage and go, and he didn't have to, he played, I don't know if you're familiar with the song Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, and it's like one of the most mangled lyrics you've ever heard in your life. I can't remember,
Nobody knows it.
Compared to John's version, it's crystal clear. So he used to stand up there, any gig, didn't matter if there was 800 people, 2,000, he'd just jump up on the stage and sing Louie Louie.
Yeah.
And he was a really great book, and he was a postman all the way through. So.
And did he go through right to the end? Was he still coming in 1989 when he reformed?
He was still going to gigs then. Yeah, he passed away now, sadly.
Wow.
But he was a big mate of Fran Taylor, who was Buzzcocks roadie for the big years. Yeah, so he got Fran into the band, into liking the band. But no, absolute legend, John the Postman.
Just thought of that.
Brilliant, thanks Paul, thanks Caroline for that. Anyone else like to ask a question? Can't see with that light. Oh, everyone's shy, yeah. Any questions? Oh, come here, man, yeah. What's your name, mate? Jeff. Oh, what a fine name. Yeah, come and use the bike and then...
Jeff, I can't hear a thing.
Hello, Paul.
Hello, Jeffrey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to Alexandra Park.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, that must have been like 15 years. He's Harley, Phil Bingle, doing drawing, like he did a shirt.
Did he?
Which was the logo.
Yeah.
Noise and Noise. And we've got the little men on the city.
Yeah.
Long since, much cherry, long since.
A bit worth money, that.
Still had it, maybe.
Well, because Steve Diggle had one. He played in it, like a pink shirt with the men on, and I thought that was the coolest shirt I'd ever seen. And the thing about it was he wore it with the collar up as well, like Elvis. And I thought, if ever I'm rich and famous, I'm going to get a shirt like that. And you had one, and you can't remember what it is.
I lost it. But the question is, how many times did you see the Buzzcocks there and what's your memory of them?
So that was the first time, and then I saw them at pretty much every time they played the Apollo. So they played for, and they did 3 albums and like 5 tours maybe, so I saw all of them. And then they had the year off, and well, it wasn't quite a year, but then they did those 3 singles. And then they played Manchester Poly, which was it was slightly smaller. And they came back and they did that, and you could see things weren't right even then, you know. That was the last time I saw them before they split up, and then I was there, and they played the Apollo. I was like, probably about 20 times, probably by the end of it.
Was the Apollo like the Strange thing?
No, that was when they played the Apollo, yeah, it's when Strange things. They did like 3 singles instead of doing an album.
Yeah.
They did it with mine, and they didn't really. I mean, the songs are great, but the production wasn't. And I don't think the actual process of recording was particularly happy time for any of them. It took probably split up basically, but yeah, I saw them at the Poly then, and you could see that. I think Pete was not quite where he should be. I don't think.
No, I didn't say that. Did you go to Bellevue?
I did go to Bellevue, yes, I did, yeah. Yeah, that was fantastic, yeah. Again, Steve Diggle had these trousers with a strap down the side. He was, what a fashion hero. Well, I don't know where you buy pants with straps down the side. To this day, I've not been able to find it. I could have made me own with a bit of paint. Yeah, they were great at Bellevue, yes. Yeah, well.
That's what I thought. For yourself.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me. I was in the band, yeah. I bought a ticket for that. My brother was in the band and I bought a ticket because I thought, I'll ask him to get me on the guest list and he'll say, oh no, I'm getting somebody else, and I'll miss it. So I bought a ticket for that.
3 out! I mean, the other question for you is, so, how much did you keep up with Shelley's sort of side projects at the time?
I'll talk about this in the book, which is really weird because
I haven't read the book yet.
he did, obviously when he did Homo Sapien, I was really into the Human League Dare. I thought it was a fantastic album, Dare. And if you listen to it, it's completely lifted off Homo Sapien, all the drum sounds and everything. Martin Allen kind of invented it all back down. So he did this whole new sound of music piece, and I never really bought into it, which is mad thinking about it. It's borderline perverse that I never bought into it, because I thought Dare was amazing, and I never got it. It just goes to show once your stars moved on, audiences are very fickle, aren't they? And that was me, to my eternal regrets, I think.
Brilliant, thanks very much for that, Jeff. Anyone else got a question for Paul? Oh yes, sir. You'd like to come and use the mic here, and everyone can hear you.
You touched on in that bit there about like the fairy tale of how the Buzzcocks were born and how it came around and so on. Fast forward 30, 40 years now, and the music industry is kind of sterile in how bands come around with talent shows and the internet and social media and how easy it is. You know, it's a far cry from the tale that you told of how the Buzzcocks came about. So, two-party question, really. Would you rather your own journey have it easier like it is now in the modern era, where it was kind of much easier to make a breakthrough, if you like, and get an album out there, or the hard graft and the miles that you did back in the day with the Buzzcocks, etc.? And if that was the case, what's your favourite tale that you can tell us tonight from the journey that you took?
Well, I think I'd be a bit of a fraud to say it was really, really tough back in the day. My brother joined the Fall and then got me in. To be honest, it was a piece of piss. I did very little work. I take your point, and I think, you had to go out and play scuzzy places and build it up, but you could get gigs quite easily. And the other thing is, you could not have a job. You could live and not have a job and just be in a band, which I think is gone now. I think the opposite, in a lot of ways, the opposite's true. I think it's harder now, to be honest. I mean, I know there's the internet and you can get your music out there straight away, but in terms of monetising it, I think it's really, really difficult and almost impossible now to just be in a band. And if you look at young musicians, well, for one, they've all got really good equipment, and for two, they're all in about 15 different bands, because you can't do it. The days of Noel Gallagher sitting in his bedroom for 3 years, being on the dole or being on the enterprise allowance or whatever, if his parents have got no money, I think that's almost gone now. To be, not to be working and to not have rich parents and still learn how to be in a band, I think it's almost impossible now. And I think it's to the real detriment of the music industry now that people who come through have got to be they've either got to have rich parents or they've got to have a job, I think. And I think you're missing out on a lot of talent. So no, I think it's harder now.
It's the same a lot in the world, isn't it? So to go back and what was your best tale from your early days making your way and doing gigs and lots of different places?
The first gig I did with the Fall was we played with the Cramps at the Electric Ballroom, which, I mean, that's a pretty big sort of, and I went to the gig. I was at school. I was still at school, and I got a lift down off Eddie and Di with the PA people, and I went down in my school uniform. I got changed at the services at Blue Ball Services out of my school uniform, and it was a pretty intimidating day, really. So yeah, I mean, it was amazing. So they had like Nick Knox on the drums. I don't know if you're aware of the Cramps, but they are, they're the coolest band in the world, aren't they? Sunglasses After Dark, Poison Ivy, amazing. And the drummer, I just thought, hang on a minute, this is really intimidating. But the gig was amazing, so I couldn't really better that, which is, that's the thing of starting off on such a high. There's only one way to go in there. But no, I love being in the Fall. And one of the things that's important to say is that there's a lot of misery and a lot of things written about how dreadful it was being in the fall, and you know, and it was really hard, and Mark was this and Mark was that, but it was brilliant. I loved it being in the fall, and I think everybody I speak to, I spoke to a lot of people who've been in the fall, and nobody's come out of it with, I mean, a few people have come out with bad memories, but overall, it's like, you know, I was in the fall, so you know, you've got nothing to complain about.
And you played Silverwell Street in Bolton in 1981 when I saw you.
Yeah. I mean, that was a highlight. When Jeff came to see us, I remember thinking, he'll go a long way, that man. How old were you then? About 40? Or?
I was 18 then, just before my 19th birthday.
Okay.
Remember it well, yeah.
What was your favourite fall gig in England?
Favourite fall gig in England? I think we played the Hammersmith Palais with the birthday party. So that was, they had, well, the way Mark Riley tells it is that they wanted to blow us off the stage. So they had like a fire eater and they really went for it. But obviously we were better. So that's what we, obviously. We had the two drummers, you know, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. And that was, I loved playing with two drummers. We played with Carl Burns as the drummer. It was just, well, I can't talk about how good it was really. I mean, there's this film of us playing the Hacienda, and there's a bit where we both look at each other and do this drum roll, and it's like, you know, that's my bromance moment, that, and I'm
Hammersmith Palais, don't get much better than that, does it? Anyone else for a question? Still can't see. Yes, sir. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about Britt Smith with the fall. Were you there when she sort of moved in and Una moved out, and then you went to play with her?
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of a gap between. It was. So we had Kay, who was Mark's. Una was in the original fall. She was a keyboard player, and then we had Kay, who was the manager. So she was Mark's partner, and we went toured America, and Kay left the band halfway through the tour. Now the thing about Kay was, I mean, she was great, Kay. She was a bit of a force of nature, quite scary, I think, in some ways. But she controlled the money, so we were halfway through this American tour, and we didn't have, without putting too fine a point, we didn't have a pot to piss in, really. But we did these gigs, and we were living hand to mouth with these gigs, and then we played Chicago, and this young woman, this is interesting. Well, this will tell you about the vagaries of memory. From what I can remember, there was a club underneath, there was a bar underneath the club, and she was there, and Mark bumped into her, and they got talking, and Mark said to me, can you stand near me, because I'm talking to this woman, and I think her boyfriend's over there and he's going to kill me. So, because, oh yes, I'll act as your bodyguard, Mark. That was 8 stone went through me, but when Britt consequently told the story, she'd been a massive Fall fan for years, and she stood right in front of the band. But anyway, one of them's true. It's for you to decide, mention them. But then we had this kind of suite then. So she followed us around for the rest of the day, and then we came home. We were saying she's got to come over, and then the thing about the Fall is, if you were in the Fall's orbit, you ended up either being in the band, managing the band, or driving the band about. So we had a what's Britt's going to do, you know? And we were saying, well, she'll be playing with us, and she won't. And then it turned out she did. So we did an album called Perverted by Language. And Britt was there, she'd moved over by there. And she kind of sat in the corner with this guitar, and we were thinking, this is a bit weird, because she wasn't playing on any of the songs. But every time we went in, she was in the corner. And then in the end, it turned into this song called Hotel Blodell, which was on the album then. So then she was in the band. But I think it was a good thing. I think it shook Mark out of the place he was in. As with anything in the Fall, it's not necessarily worse, it's not necessarily better, but it's different. And the big thing about the Fall is they never stood still. And I think she was good for that. She got us on a major level. She got the Beggars Banquet. Started spending some money. You know, we used to be able to drive around in a van with seats in after she came. And I think it was a good thing for the Fall. It made things different because it's easy to just be the same and play the same venues and do all right. Because the thing about the Fall is they always did all right. They were never massive. They never dropped. And it's harder than it looks to do that. And to do that, you've got to try different things as you go along. So yeah, I think it was great with Brexit. It was exciting. We became almost a chart band for like a bit. And then I left, and then they got really big.
I saw it last year in Manchester. That was brilliant.
Was it? It's a good gig, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks for that, mate. I think one thing that intrigues me about the Fall, when you look on Wikipedia, they must be the only band that has a Wikipedia page and then a separate page for all the band members. Feel like fantasy football trying to pick who you want. Is that how you got the House of Old together?
Yes, we have, yeah. Only 5 of us, isn't it? See, I think it's a bit of a myth, that. Well, it's not a myth, but it depends how you judge who's a member of the band. In my opinion, if someone happens to be walking past with a violin under his arm and Mark says come in for 5 minutes, that's not a member of the band for me. And there's a number of those, you know. There's one guy, Stuart Estelle, I think his name is, he's got the shortest tenure of any member of the band. He played on one song from the audience. There was a guitar on the stage and he picked it up, and there's a picture of him standing in the audience playing the guitar. Now he's counted as one of the members, like he's not a member of the band.
You can't just nip in and leave the car running and do a few
That's pretty much what Badly Grown did.
Did it?
Yeah. And Mark thought, the reason he got involved with the band, Mark thought it was a taxi going in his car. That's true. And he ended up writing a full song. But is he a member? I'm not so sure he is.
It's not cool. Couldn't be else.
He's a very nice guy.
A very nice guy, yeah. Did you have a question, mate?
Yeah, I want to ask you, did Mark ever play guitar or anything, or an instrument? Just like...
He did.
And how do you articulate to you what to sort of get...
Well, you see, the thing about the Fallers, and the thing about having a band that lasts 40 years, is if there's any possible way to write a song, the Fall did it. So sometimes, a lot of the time, Mark would just have the lyrics and people in the band would write the tune. Sometimes Mark would have... There's a song called English Sea on the album called Contest, which Mark claimed he wrote the music for. And basically, his claim to writing the music was he taped an ice cream van out the window and said, play something like that.
So he didn't actually play anything?
He played the guitar. He played the guitar, but with one finger.
Really?
Yeah, so he had this little plastic guitar.
So he just played simple riffs? And
Yeah, so like there's a song called Pay Your Rates, and it's ding, 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 ding. So that's him, because it's 2 notes. And I'm not mocking that, and I'm not, you know, I'm hardly, you know, Jaco Pastorius myself, but he had a good way with the riff, Mark. But he couldn't play guitar in that way. But like there's certain things that he wrote, there's certain things.
So like a simple riff, and you say, I don't like that. Like, can you do it like a different way?
There was plenty of that. There was plenty of that. Yeah. The Totally Wired was one. His instructions to me was play it like a cardboard box. And from that, we did Totally Wired, and he reckons that meant he wrote it. He wrote that song. Because he told me to play it like a cardboard box. But there was a lot of that, play it like an orange, play it like a snake.
He'd write all the songs, and they say like, play it like this.
No, not at all. But a lot of the time, he'd be presented with a piece of music, and he'd go through his notes and put music to it. A lot of the time. Some of the time he had a lyric and people put a tune to it. Not very often that, because that's a bit more musical, that, isn't it? But like I say, if a band lasts 40 years without that many members, not that many members.
So when you used to play around with the old amps and everything, you play a gig, you go around, play with all the amps and the knobs and that. Did you know what he was doing? Or
No.
Just messing around?
He didn't know what he was doing. He was pissing off the band to get a bit more tension on the stage. So he did, in that respect, he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. But they didn't get wise to it. They used to put like a fake bass drum mic in the bass drum, so he'd come along and get the bass drum mic, know it out, and he was never doing anything. And there was another one like that, and stuff like that. If you ever look at Steve in the later years,
that must have annoyed you. You was being
again, there's certain things you do to make a band last 40 years, and one of the things he liked to do was to stir things up and get people on edge, so they play a certain way. You can do that for a while, but it does get very wearing, and it's quite hard work for him as well as the band. And I think the great thing, well, there's a lot of great things about the Fall, but I think the great thing about the last lineup is they kind of had a truce on that, really. Each stopped doing stuff like that, and they stopped worrying about it. And I think that last lineup of the Fall lasted, the last was like 10 years. And I think they were brilliant. You know, Pete Greenway on guitar, who plays in House of All now. He doesn't do the gigs because he's not in so well, but he plays on House of All, and he's such a brilliant guitarist, I think. And I think the last lineup of the Fall, once there was the need for all that, bollocks basically, is gone. Because it's quite a...
I don't know, I think that's what made the Fall.
Yeah, maybe. It did in some ways, but it's easier to look at that and say it's great than to be on the receiving end of it. And I never was, to be honest. Most of that turning off the amps and all that nonsense. It was a long time after me. I mean, he did, you know, he kicked the old cymbal over now and again, but nothing aggressive.
Thanks, mate. Ben, here's take the stage.
Combining them, Mark and Pete, if you like, Mike Smith famously didn't get along with a lot of people, he was very aggressive. But I think he always seemed to get on well with Pete Shelley, didn't he? Is that right? I
think he did, yeah. I think he was a bit sniffy about the music sometimes, but I think he had a lot of respect for Pete and Buzzcocks. I mean, with good reason. Buzzcocks paid for the Fall's first ever recordings. It's a new thing. That was paid for by New Hormones. And it was going to come out on New Hormones, but they ran out of money because, I think, mainly because of the White Riot tour. They had to pay for hotels and things. So they didn't have the money to carry on New Hormones as a label. And then, but so they, you know, I've talked about this a lot, about the altruism of Pete and Richard, and so they gave them the tapes. They didn't sell them the tapes, they gave them, which then made the Paul able to put the record out and came out and stepped forward. It was Mark Perry's then. So yeah, I think he respected Pete in a lot of ways, and why wouldn't you? You know, Pete's a clever guy, or he was. But yeah, he did respect him. But again, the thing you've got to remember about Mark's interviews were as much a part of his art or his performance as his lyrics were, or him on stage. So you've got to look at what he says in interviews with a certain amount of, he's trying to say something there, he's trying to steer this interview in a certain way. And if you look at it that way, it becomes a very interesting thing. If you look at an interview as a piece of performance art, if you like, it's great, but it's not necessarily what he really thinks, and what he says in his interviews isn't necessarily what he. But I think if you've got him on the right day, he would be very respectful of Pete and Buzzcocks, I think. And quite right.
A completely different question. I think, is it right that the Buzzcocks fans and Slaughter of the Dogs fans had a lot of rivalry between each other?
Oh, I'm not sure how long it lasted. I'm not sure how long Slaughter of the Dogs lasted. But when they did that Free Trade Hall gig, Slaughter of the Dogs were the sort of, oh, we'll have to get these on. These have got a bit of an audience. And they did have a bit of an audience. They had a lot of within-show boot boys, for want of a better word. They did, and they played, it's funny, when you read the accounts of the gigs, it's, if you ever heard an interview with anybody else, we were the best, the biggest band in Manchester, they had to have us on to get an audience, and you read Howard saying, I don't know how I ended up publicly, because nobody liked it anyway. But, so they had a bit of an audience, they did, and if you look at the other thing, if you look at the posters, there's two posters for that Lesser Free Trade Hall gig. There's the ones Howard made, and it's Sex Pistols, Slaughter the Dogs, Buzzcocks, and then there's the one Slaughter the Dog making it. Slaughter the Dogs, Sex Pistols, and Support. So yeah, but there was a bit of a rivalry there, and it kicked off a little bit, I think, at that gig as well. Billy Guthrie, out of the Cult, he was a Slaughter the Dogs fan. Because he was Winshaw, they were Winshaw band, so everybody in Winshaw knew they were. There was this big, there was a subway in Northington, and there was this big graffiti, this poem about Bowie, that Wayne Barrett of Slaughter the Dogs wrote on the wall. I can't remember it now. It's a good mark for how good his lyrics were if you'd have seen that poem on the wall.
Last quick question, what's your favourite cover of a Buzzcocks song?
What, cover version or cover?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nostalgia by Penetration.
I think that's great, yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think that probably is, although I did get, I got given this album, I must apologise, I can't remember the name of the band, but it's surf covers of Buzzcocks. It came out last year and it's got a sleeve by Malcolm. And it's absolutely fantastic. You know, it really works, and they always put a lot of thought in how they do it. I must remember the name of the band, but that probably might be. But Roots. Sorry? Roots. That's them, yeah, have a look for it. It's really good. I mean, it sounds like it might be terrible, but honestly, that's really good. But I think you're probably right there. I think Nostalgia. It's a bit heavy rock, isn't it? They were getting a bit. They had that new Fred Purser on his name, who was a bit more heavy metal, I think. But no, I think that's great. They did a great version of I Don't Mind with John on the drums as well. Yeah. That's fairly recently, that. But
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I think my favourite all-time single of Buzzcocks has got to be I Don't Mind. What a beautiful piece of music, punk or...
What's your favourite Buzzcocks actual single? That's an interesting... I think probably Love You More would be mine.
I'll go with I Don't Mind, I think, stick with that, yeah.
I could talk about this all. We have a vote.
I think the thing that made me smile talking of cover versions in Paul's book, Pete Shelley mentioned Final Cannibals. Yeah. Cannibals doing Ever Fallen in Love.
Yeah.
And he said it must have been a better version because it got to number 10. Whereas Buzzcocks only got to 12. No justice. Any more questions before we finish? Right up, one at the back. Do you want to come and get the mic?
Might just reach.
Or where that comes from.
Good evening. It's a trivial question, maybe not super interesting, but I wondered why now about the book.
So that again, sorry.
Why now?
Why now? Well,
obviously it's not. You didn't write it last week.
No.
But
Why I started when I did? I did this event here actually, and it was an exhibition of Malcolm's art and other Buzzcocks inspired art. It was in this building, and I interviewed Kid Strange, who's Pete's partner, and kind of building up to that, I was thinking I should speak to him about that, because that was when it occurred to me that there should be a definitive biography of Buzzcocks. I'm not sure that this is turned out as a definitive biography, but it's truer to what I wanted to do, I think. But that was my thought then. I was thinking that'd be a good place to start, so that was why then. It took me a bit longer to write than I thought it would, but then books always take longer than you think. You think they'll knock them out in 10 minutes?
It doesn't surprise me with the depth of the information you've got. I'm gobsmacked, and fair play to you for doing that. It's absolutely amazing. Right, we've got time for one more question, I think, if anyone's any burning desire. Yes, mate.
That light's brutal, isn't it?
I know.
Light.
Hi Paul.
Hiya.
How reluctant do you think Pete was, when the band reformed? Because obviously there was the whole Flag Comedians thing that Steve was doing. Was he dragged back, do you think, or was he really up for doing it?
I don't think he was dragged back. I don't think it's funny, isn't it? Because he was openly laughing at the idea pretty close to when they actually reformed. So I don't think he was very happy about that Buzzcocks FOC at all. I mean, probably understandably, really. But I think that was Steve's attempt to try and get the band back together. And however you might disagree with how he did it, I'm really glad that they did, because what I loved about Buzzcocks Reunion, that you can say that, the song, I think some of the songs are great, and they're not as well produced, I don't think, but the way that they made a working model which sustained his life, a happy life, I think that's a marvellous thing. I think he did it for the money to begin with, honestly, which is fair enough, but once he realised he could have this model that worked, where they could, he could play gigs when he wanted to play gigs and not play gigs when he didn't want to. They could reissue the old stuff and do new albums as well, and he could live a life away from Buzzcocks. And if it gave him however many years of happiness, then I think that's a fantastic thing. I think everybody deserves a payday, and they went through a lot of nonsense the first time around, as bands did in them days. So yeah, I think he was glad he did. I think he looked to me. I wasn't confident of this, but he's looked to me that he'd really got a really happy working model. He was happy he was living in Estonia, and he had a happy life there. And what's tragic about it is, he had that period, and then it didn't last as long as it should have. But yeah, I don't think it was a particular strain for him to reform.
Just one last little thing. You touched on this before about when Howard left, very early on. Obviously, if he hadn't have done, we wouldn't have got a magazine, I consider like one of the great Manchester bands of all time.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you said, Pete emerged and became the front man. Otherwise, might not have happened.
Yeah, I think there's a really, whether it was just because he wanted to finish his degree, because he gave that kind of statement which didn't make a lot of sense about this is all plain old out or whatever it was. But I think he realised that there's only so far you could take punk rock really, and they were going to have to change their ideas. And they both did. What's amazing is they both worked together really well in Buzzcocks, and then when they did that, Buzzcocks and Magazine in a lot of ways, they weren't very similar at all. And the fact that that band could encompass both of that, I think it's great, and it was a fantastic thing that they split up, which is because he was still on the gigs, he was kind of managing them for a while, Howard, when he left. But yeah, I think he must have thought the band's in safe hands, Buzzcocks. Pete can handle this. I don't think he'd have split it up. he just said, right, that's it, I'm leaving, you're going to have to go back and sign on the dot. He knew that he could carry on, because he knew how good Pete was.
I mean, you know, the lyrics at time were sound, as we can see on that bench. And
yeah. Well, I think
I'm sure you all agree, we could probably have about half a dozen benches out there.
Yeah. I think the thing about Pete's lyrics is, and I think if you look at them compared to, say, The Clash or whatever, they're not, I think childish is the wrong word, but it's very easy to articulate that you're angry about the, you know, there's nothing to do and you sat around and the buses are. But but it's difficult to articulate the stuff that Pete did, and you know, I've always said it's very difficult to write. I mean, when I talk about a love song, I don't mean I love you, you love me, but to write about your feelings is a lot harder than about that, and your emotions is harder than writing White Riot. And it is, and it took a singular talent to do it, I think.
Definitely. Well, thanks everyone for your questions. It's been a great night. Thanks to the gallery again for making us welcome. Thanks to everybody who's part of the project to get the bench and the memorial garden up and running. Have you any final thoughts, Paul, before... I've got a line I want to read from your book.
Oh, right, go on then.
But yeah, no, have you got any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Well, I'll tell you what, I think what this represents with the bench and the mural, and a small town like this recognising Pete and Pete's talent, I think it's a credit to the town of Lee, I think. I think you should be really proud of that this exists, and the garden and everything. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic work by the Pete Shelley Memorial Campaign over the last few years. Paul and Abby and whoever else is involved. And you know, thanks for asking me to get involved. It's been brilliant. I just want to. There's some moving parts of this book as well, and I just want to. I think this line is something that Malcolm Garrett said. I know you mentioned it, Paul, about all the planets having to be in line, but I just thought this summed it up. And Malcolm says, you make your own luck, you go out there and find things that inspire you, and you get your hands dirty. The stars have to align, but you have to be watching the skies to see when it happens. I think that is spot on.
That's a great quote.
That's a great quote, and I think you've captured it in this book, Paul.
Well, thank you.
So, Paul Hanley.